Hello friends and welcome. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do a yarn review. I am not typically someone who gets excited about new lines of yarn or anything like that, but I watched this video by the Crochet Crowd, Stitch Along with Mikey, and was completely glued to the video about this new yarn from Yarnspirations and Red Heart, all-in-one granny square yarn. This video is not sponsored. I purchased all of this yarn with my own money, and after watching that video I knew that I had to have it because I love a magic yarn. This yarn, if you have not seen it yet, is intended to make granny squares. But instead of doing all of the color switching, it is a space dyed acrylic yarn that changes color exactly where you need it to make the different rounds, assuming you use the pattern that is provided with it. Each skein is 8.8 ounces, that's 250 grams, 417 yards, or 381 meters. It is 100% acrylic, medium 4, and it is intended to use a US I-9 or a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. Each skein has 5 different colors for 5 different rounds of your granny square, and you start in the middle with the shortest length and then stitch round and round and get your granny square. I'm not really someone who is super into granny squares, so it's funny that I was very excited about this yarn. However, like I said, I love a magic yarn. So there are some tips and tricks that Mikey gives you in this video that I'll link to about how to make this work. It is a little bit finicky, and so today what I wanted to do was show you the different colors that I purchased, talk about them, show you the squares, and then give you my opinion after having done about 15 of these squares of how I think it turns out. So without further ado, let's take a look at the colors. This yarn just came out. It is sold by Yarnspirations on their website. It's also sold by Joann. It is a hot commodity. I, again, am not one usually for getting the latest and greatest new thing in yarn, but I went on the Yarnspirations website and I purchased these 2 skeins of yarn plus a third in sort of a rose color, and the first one on the top here in the sort of shades of brown and natural colors is called Erin Cream. The blue one is called Erin Soft Sky, and I think the third one that I purchased was Erin Rose Wheat or something like that. Put it in my cart. It didn't ship, and then they finally gave me a refund for that one. The list price for these yarns is about $10 a skein. Joann had them on sale for about $7.95. So you can get them somewhere between $7 and probably $12 a skein. Each skein makes 14 granny squares, and I'll show you the finished granny squares here in just a moment. But I purchased 3 thinking that would be a great small blanket in these different colors. But I couldn't get the rose wheat color. And so then I went searching online for other sellers and found Joann. They did not have the rose wheat, but they had another one that I thought would contrast nicely. This one is Soft White Shadow in sort of grays and creams and black and white, that I thought went nicely with sort of the muted colors. They also, one of the greatest things I think about this is the color combinations. So they have the muted colors, but they also have super bright colors. And so I bought 3 more in super brights. This one is Soft White Hot Stuff. Then we have black moody cherry, and finally this one is soft white citrus twist. It does show you when you buy the yarn the skein itself, but then also what the worked square looks like. So on the label here you can see the colors of the square as it's worked up. So here are the 6 different shades that I purchased, all worked up. These have not been blocked, so they're straight off the crochet hook. It starts with the center, and then you have each round changes color in the corner, assuming that you have your tension right. This one is the soft white shadow. This one is the Aran soft sky. This one is the Aran cream. This one is soft white hot stuff. This one is black moody cherry. And this super eye-popping one is soft white citrus twist. This one reminds me of the colors of the pop art from the 1960s. I just love this one. So as I said, these are all just straight off of the crochet hook. You can see they're curling a little bit. I have taken these with a low iron under a damp cloth, and that has really evened everything out nicely. So here they are again. These have been blocked. So as I said, I've stitched about 15 or so of these now, and I wanted to give you my opinion about how this yarn crochets up, what I think of the granny squares themselves, and whether I think this is something that you might want to do. So obvious pros, and this is what it says on the label: no color switching, keep on stitching. With a granny square, if you have the multiple colors, a traditional granny square, you'd have to have 5 different balls of yarn to make a 5 different colored granny square. And you would have lots and lots of ends to weave in at the end. With this, you have one end where you start, which sort of gets stitched over at the center, and one end at the end where you tie off and cut for the next granny square. So many fewer ends to weave in. Definite plus. And it's a magic yarn, so you get the really cool experience of you get to the next round and poof, you're ready for the next color. This yarn, in my opinion, is a practice in tension management. And what I mean by that is it's essentially a self-striping yarn for granny squares. But you're making double crochets around, which take up a very variable amount of yarn. And you want the next color to start right when you're finishing the previous round. For some of the colors, that means that when you get to that first round, you have to adjust sometimes your tension to make sure that your stitches for that round fit within that color block. And I found that the first round and the last round, I have to use a much tighter tension. The second round, on pretty much all of these, I have to use a much more loose tension. But on almost every single round, that last side of the square, I have to get to the end and then decide where the color change is, whether I need to pull those stitches out and then redo them tighter or looser so that my end finishes at the correct time. I don't know if other people are experiencing this to the degree that I am, but I find that just about every round I'm having to pull out some stitches, sometimes multiple times. And so that does take some patience, but it is nice to have that color change in the right spot. It's really important too that you correct that, I think, on every round, otherwise it will just perpetuate, and by the end you won't have your colors changing in the right spot. So if you don't care about that, then that's fine. But in order to make the magic granny square, that's what you'll want to do. And that video that I linked to at the beginning, he does some really good tips for how to make that happen. So this is the Red Heart granny square. If you've used Red Heart yarn, it's your basic Red Heart yarn, so the colors are all really nice and bright. There's not dye lots. They're the same color every single time because of the acrylic yarn. That's really easy for them to do. The color separation is really, really nice. There is occasionally, I don't know if you can see it here, occasionally some of the other colors sort of have gotten on the yarn. So in the yellow here, you can see a little bit of the red. In the brights, the white sometimes has a little bit of the bright colors in it, but I think that's really nice. So you'll see the white on the various shades is not actually the same white. It's sort of tinted. This one is tinted a little bit blue. This one is more white. This one is brighter white with those bright colors sort of flecked throughout. So it's consistent throughout the skein. It'll be consistent across the different skeins that you buy. If you buy multiple skeins, they should match. So that's really great. Also, the acrylic yarn from Red Heart wears really nicely. So if you are making a blanket out of this, it will last for a long time and look nice. So this yarn does have a tendency to split a little bit, I've found. It is a 3-ply yarn, so as you're crocheting around, sometimes the yarn will split. And I've tried with 3 different types of crochet hooks. 2 are aluminum and 1 is rosewood. And they have differences in the shape of the tip. This blue one, blue aluminum, is Susan Bates. The red aluminum is Boy. And then this one is rosewood. I don't have the maker, I'm sorry, on that one. But you can see this one has a very sharp point. This did not work well for this yarn. It split terribly. Usually I prefer the wooden hooks because I like the way that they feel. They're more comfortable in my hand. I tried the Boy. It is a little bit rounder with a wider gap at the hook than the Susan Bates, which has a sharper notch, but it's a very rounded tip. And of the 3 that I tried, the Susan Bates was the most comfortable for me and allowed me to go much quicker. So this is the hook that I'm using for these, but I wanted to point out that it does have a tendency to split. So if you have a sharp hook on your crochet hook, you might want to look for a different one. So that is about all I wanted to say. I think it's a really great yarn. It's a lot of fun to see the colors change. It does take some patience and some tension management going for the one round to another. So if that's not your thing, maybe this isn't the yarn for you. But one nice thing is that because this is a automatic color changing yarn, if you've managed your tension and made sure that your yarn colors change at exactly the right spot, this is 2 separate squares, and I don't know if you can see that the holes match up exactly. Your finished squares will be exactly the same size because they all have exactly the same amount of yarn in them. And if you were just using a single color and then changing to another ball, etc., like you would with a normal granny square, that might not be the case. If your tension on one of the squares was slightly different on the other, you'd have to manage the final sizing in the blocking process. So that is definitely a pro. All of your squares will end up exactly the same size if you've managed your yarn tension properly. So thank you so much for watching this review. If you have a chance to get this yarn for yourself, I would love to see what you're making with it. If you want to tag me on Instagram or leave me a note in the comments. Thank you so much for spending some of your creative time with me. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!